Good morning. Looking at the US markets at the close, we saw the markets closing just off the lows of the day, with the Dow down 120 points or a 0.5% slide, brought S&P 500 in the red, and the Nasdaq also moving into the red late in the trading session, down by 8 points. Early in the day, we had seen a fair bit of volatility coming through into the media sector after the big news yesterday of the AT&T and Time Warner deal. But there, of course, the focus really moved to the Federal Reserve during the day, waiting on the announcement coming through on interest rates. As expected, we had Jerome Powell, the chair of the Federal Reserve, coming out and saying that yes, that rates would move higher. Now, the cash rate in the US now at 1.75 to 2% range, and this was expected by the markets before this announcement came through, an 87% chance of an interest rate hike coming through from the Federal Reserve. But we did see some of the dot points moving, and that's the expectation of rates moving higher in the future. And now, if you have a look at expectations from the Federal Reserve, they're now looking at around 2 more rate hikes coming through to the end of the 2018 calendar year. The market sold off on this news. Then we had Jerome Powell heading to the lectern and speaking at the press conference. We saw the market regaining a bit of momentum. He did come through and say that his positioning was about what was happening with the strength of the economy. He wasn't someone who was going to be moving out of his lines and looking at what was happening with trade and other negotiations globally. But he did say that trade concerns are a risk for the market. He also mentioned that the strong US economy, reinvigorating those expectations of strong growth coming forward, and not really that concerned about inflation, and talking about only slight movements coming through in higher wage costs in the US. The market liked what he was saying, but as soon as he left the lectern, we did see the market continuing to sell off, and a lot of people just focusing on those long-term movements in interest rates and the expectation that that will create a bit of concern for growth for some companies in the future. We did see the banks coming under pressure. We also had a fair bit of nervousness coming into some of the industrial stocks. But during the day, as I mentioned, the other focus what was happening in the media sector. Now, we had the announcement yesterday that AT&T can come through and acquire Time Warner for that $85 billion US dollar deal. Now, what we saw overnight, though, was AT&T shares falling on this news, but we saw Time Warner shares making some solid gains, and other companies that came into focus. We had Fox A shares up around 7.7% at the end of trade, because it does look like this might open the door for more mergers in that space, not only in the US but also globally. And at the moment, we have those Fox assets under attack from two positions coming through from Comcast and also Walt Disney on some of the prime assets that could be taken over from Fox's network. We've also seen a fair bit of movement coming into those commodity markets, up and down with the market over the session. At the end of trade, we had the gold price up by $4 an ounce to $1,303 an ounce, and the oil price falling a little initially, but then ending higher, up around 0.5% to 66.69 US a barrel. Now, today here at home, the market set for an 8-point slide at the start of trade. We do have job data being released for the last month, so keep an eye on later today. And also having a look at the Australian dollar, now holding around 75.70 US cents after selling off quite dramatically straight after the rate announcement early this morning.